We'll see.
Okay, should be a live moment. Let's wait a little bit for LinkedIn to pick up. Okay, and I have a new guest, my 12th, I think, for today. So this is going very fluently. What's your name and what brings you to JCON?
Yeah, my name is Karl Marbaise. I'm working as a Java developer for about 20 years in the meantime. And I have today a talk today about stream gatherers today. I'm also a Java champion and doing a lot of work in open source for the Apache Maven project, the PMC, uh, former chairman and things like that.
Okay. A lot of activity in the community.
Yeah, I think the community is very important in open source in general because without the community, you're not really relevant in any way. So in any way you combine things, what you think and what the community thinks, and combine that into maybe new ideas or just working together with the community or just sharing some ideas or discussion things like that, what is happening here on JCON as well, because you're meeting so many people here and just talking about ideas or what is going on and things, how people are thinking about specific stuff or details or what you think could be new ideas, how to evolve things or something like that.
Okay. Back to your talk. So it's about stream gatherers. What changed? What's the most important change in the recent Java versions?
I would say the opening in some interfaces and possibilities to um, give more opportunities to the developers in their hand because Stream API, for example, has been introduced in Java 8, for example, and it's a long time there. In the meantime, we have a long time there. And you come to the point that there are some limitations in there. For example, a collector is a terminal operation and you have the intermediate operation like map, flat map, and things like that. But exactly at that point, the stream gatherers is opening for the intermediate operations. And that gives you more opportunities to make your code more readable, more understandable, more maintainable ability or better maintainability, and gives you things to express your ideas in a more better way than it could be done today because so many people are using that. That's a very good thing. But sometimes you have to do some operations and collect things first, create a list, an intermediate list or something like that to continue then working on that. But the stream gatherers makes it open to implement your own intermediate operations, which makes it more easier to understand, maintainable, and often to reduce the number of intermediate results. So it also saves sometimes a lot of memory, so you don't need to create a list and work on that. So you can do that directly and start working on the intermediate results. So that's the thing. It's becoming more open and more give you more opportunities. It's not perfect, of course, and also the Stream API is not perfect and has some limitations, of course, but it makes it more easier to use. I think that's the most important thing over the time.
Is that how Java evolves? The feedback from the community. We love that this was added, but we have some limitations that we want to get fixed.
Yeah, if you think about that, because at the beginning the Stream API was a very good thing. Many people needed to get used to it because they said, okay, I will stuck with the traditional loops or something like that. Many people complained about performance and things like that at the beginning, but that has changed over the time a lot in a lot of ways. For example, with Java 11, 17, 21, and things like that. But then the feedback, if you take a look based on how it is changed and take a look into the JAPs and see the reference to the bug reports into the Jira there, you see people are complaining in some ways about that. Okay, that would be a good functionality into the Stream API or things like that. But the problem from this perspective of the language designers or the library designers in that way is what kind of functionality should we introduce for which are so general that everybody will take an advantage of that, and that's very complicated decision to make. So the end of this discussion, I think, was to make more an interface or some kind of intermediate, like the stream gatherers, for example, done so. So to make it open, that a developer can do it on its own. So you don't need to wait, sometimes in the future there will be some enhancement there. So it makes it easier for us to use it, in particular in special situations, because one domain is different than the other, and one developer likes something like that instead of that, or something like that. These discussions, and I think that makes it more or less useless to discuss about that. So you have the tool set here now to do that in your own way.
Is that what happens a lot in Java, that some kind of libraries get implemented into Java, like you had Lombok to remove boilerplate, but then you had records, which actually replace a lot of the Lombok functionality. Do you see more of those cases?
I would say the first thing, the idea of records was not to reduce boilerplate code. The idea was to have a nominal type of data carrier, which is immutable in itself, which is not 100% correct, because if you put a list on that, on a record, it's not immutable anymore. But the idea makes sense in several ways. In particular, if you think it about the relationship with sealed classes, for example, or interfaces and all this stuff, and if you put that together, you get algebraic data types, which is a very good thing. So that makes it easier to go that way and solve other problems. And it is also very important to integrate that over the time, because many people you see, okay, this point, and this point has been enhanced, but many people lack the view from a 30,000 feet bird's view, because you don't see the combination, because you have some features, some picks here, something there. But if you go some steps backwards and see, if you get the overall picture, for example, with the algebraic types, that's very important to see that. And many people discuss that about Lombok and things like that, or records, or just reduce boilerplate. That was only a small part of that, because then things like switch expressions and things like that combined to that makes it much more powerful. And I think that's the most important thing over the time, that it had been handled by the language architect in a very good way, which I think it's a really hard job to do in the right way over the time, to do that in the right way and make these combinations over the time all over to get a total better result than just picking this feature, for example.
Yeah, I heard, I think it's presentation already a few years ago, that the way the records were designed was to one day be able to handle them better in switch expressions. So there is from the start an idea. It's not now, but soon it will work this way.
Yeah, for example, as you mentioned, the switch expressions, for example, if you do that and combine that with pattern matching, for example, then you have exactly that point. The records are one thing, which is a very good thing. Yes, of course, it reduces some boilerplate. I think it's a nice thing to have that. But in the end, you can combine that with many things like pattern matching, and then you have a switch expression where you can use a record as a type and things like that, and combine that to much more powerful things. And if you combine that to, for example, C classes and implementation, because a record can implement an interface, and then you can combine these things, and that makes very powerful things possible, which many people complain about in the beginning. Oh, use Kotlin or something like that, or Scala or OCaml or whatever we are talking about. But over the time, if you combine these things, then you can get very powerful things. And many people, unfortunately, don't really know the new things in Java over the time, because they say, oh, we are at 11, 17, 21, and don't know the new features, because they don't really read that or understand that, maybe, or have not the time, maybe. Don't blame someone, but it's very hard job, or very challenging to be up to date with these new features. And I think the feedback from the community to the language architects and the OpenJDK developers is a very, very important thing to see, okay, that feature works or that works not, or something like values, the vector things. All that stuff is very important to get that these feedback loops here, because the language architect and many developers on the OpenJDK are working on that, but the whole world is maybe doing something different. And I think that the language is for solving really problems. And so if it is a good idea to make the job a bit easier here, or to express things in a more convenient way than before, I think that is a good way, and to improve the productivity for developers.
So your talk is about improvements in Java 24. What are you looking forward to in the next versions?
If I correctly remember, not up to date, the scope value is part of the targeted as far as I know, which is a very interesting thing. I'm not very deep in these details, but that looks very good to have that in a way to express things which were at the moment not very good possible, or not even possible, to say it that way. There are other things like, if I correctly remember, the content line is not completed yet because it's just filling up over the few weeks, but there are coming up new things like structured concurrency is another preview as far as I know, because what I've seen so far from structured concurrency will completely change the way to handle things like that. As, for example, completable futures and things like that. It was a different story, and in some ways a bit hard to use, or the expression or the expressiveness from structured concurrency is much better than the old one with completable futures, for example.
So a lot to look forward to.
I think so, yeah, definitely. There's much coming up there. You should look up that on the OpenJDK, things like that on the website. There is always the information, what is coming up in the JAPs, and take a look. I can strongly recommend the people to read the JAPs, because there are so many information in these JAPs about these, how they work, what the goal was, for example, what is the idea behind that, or what is the idea to target what kind of problem. Because if you really read that, then you understand much more details about that. I think that's very important to read that.
And if you don't read it, visit a talk like yours about one example.
Yeah, okay, that might be a possibility too, or an option too, yes. But I strongly recommend to read that, because it's a different thing, like visiting a talk and see some parts of that. Maybe you can't do that in 45 minutes or something, and reading a complete JAP, it takes much longer. And I always recommend to play around with these new features and just try them out. Just write some tests about that, take a look how they work, and what are you expecting? Have you really understood the problem, for example? Or I have coming to my mind the class-fill API, things like that. That's a very complicated thing, but if you dig into that, that's a very interesting way to do that. And I think that will solve many problems in the future with older, like ASM, things like that. And the dependencies for libraries from a particular JDK version, or coming up with new version after the new versions are coming out. And I think that's a very good thing. But you need to invest some time, yes.
Invest some time, read the JAPs, and then follow us on Foojay, where we talk about all these things.
That would be a possibility too, yeah, because Foojay has many interesting articles, or Insight.java has many very detailed articles about that. It took some time on also to take a look on the YouTube channel of the Java people, and that is very important to do that on a regular basis, to get some insights how it works, or what the idea behind that. Maybe you don't need to use it in your current project, but just to get an insight what is working on, what is going on there in the community, in particular on the OpenJDK part, and what is coming up in new releases, and what you can expect from that. I think that is a very important thing.
Okay, nice message to spread. Thank you for your time.
Yes.
Good luck with the talk, and have fun here.
Yeah, thank you very much. Appreciate that. Thank you. Bye.